Blue blood splattered Sergeant Hill's power armor as his pulse rifle shots eviscerated the Tsenkethi warrior's thorax. With humanity's surprise defeat by the Tsenkethi fleet nearly complete, Hill roared with desperate rage, leading his squad of human soldiers against the alien horde with a burning fury those arrogant bugs had never encountered. For weeks, the Tsenkethi fleet had pounded human space, overwhelming planetary defenses with their technological superiority. On New Eden Colony, an endless storm of plasma bombs and antimatter missiles decimated their orbital defenses with casual ease. The small human garrison was hopelessly outnumbered, but as Tsenkethi ground troops tunneled through the surface, they discovered the human soldiers were made of sterner stuff than the concrete. From behind barricades in the rubble, Sergeant Hill and his blood-soaked squad unleashed a storm of white-hot pulse rounds. One human soldier was worth 100 Tsenkethi in close combat. The aliens had expected a cakewalk ground invasion against the soft, fragile primates. Instead, they slammed into a wall of steel, fire, and fury, with hardened human veterans fighting like crazed berserkers. For hours, Hill's squad held the line. Blue insectoid ichor ran thick as civilians reached the bunkers. But the Tsenkethi numbers were too great. Their tunneling machines bypassed the front lines, pouring into civilian shelters. Tsenkethi dragged screaming women and children out as slaves. Hill ordered a fighting retreat to the spaceport, to get off-world and continue the larger struggle, before the Tsenkethi glassed the now empty colony. He'd make the alien scum pay in blood 100 times over for every human life stolen today. As their hijacked transport breached the atmosphere, the bright flare of neutron bombs lit the viewscreen. The Tsenkethi were taking no chances. A cold darkness gripped Hill's heart. This was no longer a border skirmish. The Tsenkethi were waging a war to exterminate mankind. Only the courage and ferocity of Earth's human soldiers stood between survival and the unthinkable. It was time to show those alien bugs the true meaning of humanity. Fuck yeah. Hill's blood-soaked boots stomped onto the steel deck of the UEDF dropship as it breached Earth's atmosphere. The craft shook violently, but he didn't care. His mind replayed a constant loop of Tsenkethi bugs, dragging screaming civilians away. Dying was the last thing he feared now. The dropship smashed into the landing pad at UEDF headquarters. Hill and his battered squad stormed into the command center. Startled officers gaped at the gore-soaked warriors. Hill snapped a salute to the grizzled man at the head of the room. General Marcus Graves, hero of a dozen bloody campaigns. The old warhorse had to be pushing 70, but still looked like he could rip a man's head off. "Report, Sergeant. What the hell happened out there?" "New Eden Colony has fallen, sir. Civilian casualties, near total. The Tsenkethi, their fleet, their weapons. We never stood a chance." Graves slammed a balled fist on the steel command console, face twisting in rage. "Those goddamned bugs, this is an act of war." He stabbed a button on the intercom. "This is General Graves to all UEDF forces. Initiate full mobilization, I repeat, full mobilization. Call up the reserves, reactivate the mothball fleet. We're going to war." Graves turned back to Hill, eyes flashing. "Sergeant, you're hereby promoted to lieutenant. I'm giving you a platoon of our toughest troopers and best gear. Your orders are to spearhead the attack. We'll show those alien bastards what it means to piss off the human race." Hill cracked his knuckles, a slow smile spreading across his blood-flecked face. As human forces mobilized for a counterattack, the Tsenkethi invasion swept across human space like a ravenous swarm. Colony after colony fell beneath their onslaught, populations enslaved or butchered. On the Tsenkethi throne world, Queen Alara lounged on her obsidian throne, savoring news of their victories. Her black compound eyes gleamed with malice as a quivering subordinate delivered his report. "My queen, our forces have conquered a dozen more human worlds. Their feeble resistance crumbles before us. Soon all of mankind shall toil as our slaves." "Excellent," Alara purred. "These pathetic primates are even weaker than we imagined. Press the attack. I want Earth itself kneeling before me within a cycle." In high orbit over humanity's homeworld, the massed fleets of the UEDF assembled for a decisive strike. Mighty dreadnoughts, bristling with guns and missiles, formed up with agile destroyers and swarms of fighters. At the heart of the formation loomed the UES Indomitable, pride of the human race. The massive warship dwarfed those around it, armored flanks glinting in the light of the sun. Lieutenant Hill stood on the bridge, a fire raging in his eyes, colder than the void as he gazed out at the stars. His platoon of grim-faced veterans waited in the drop bay, armed to the teeth. "Lieutenant, we've located the Tsenkethi forward command post," the sensor officer reported. "It's a space station orbiting a gas giant in the Cygni system." "Then that's our target," Hill growled. "All ships prepare for warp jump. We're going in hard and fast. It's time to show these alien scum what humans are made of." The mighty human fleet leapt into warp, crossing light years in moments to emerge amidst the massed Tsenkethi forces, with guns blazing. The Indomitable shrugged off plasma blasts and antimatter missiles, smashing enemy ships to glowing vapor with its gargantuan railguns. Tsenkethi ships swarmed like angry hornets around the human dreadnought. Casualty reports flooded in as the Indomitable's escorts fell, one by one, burned and broken. But the flagship bulled onwards, blasting a path to the central space station. "Lieutenant, you have a go for drop assault," the captain barked. "Give 'em hell, troopers." Hill's platoon piled into a heavily armored assault shuttle, the ship shaking around them as it launched towards the station. The Tsenkethi point defenses filled the void with flak bursts, but the pilot weaved through the fire with daredevil precision. The shuttle slammed into the station's hull, magnetic clamps locking on. Shaped charges blasted a ragged hole through the armored skin. "Go, go, go!" Hill roared. He leapt through the breach, pulse rifle spitting white-hot death. His soldiers poured through behind him, fanning out in practiced formation. The Tsenkethi swarmed to meet them, plasma rifles blazing. Blue ichor splashed across steel walls as Hill's platoon returned fire. Inhuman shrieks and human screams of pain filled the air as a vicious close-quarters battle erupted. Hill fought like a man possessed, pulse rifle bucking in his grip. He waded through the alien warriors, their exoskeletons shattering under the hail of armor-piercing rounds. His blood-slick boots crushed twitching insectoid corpses into the deck as he pushed deeper into the station. At last they reached the central command chamber. Tsenkethi Royal Guards, elite warriors in crimson battlesuits, formed a wall of chitin and steel before the huge double doors. "Breach that door," Hill commanded, dropping behind a steel pillar as plasma bolts sizzled past. One of his troops, a hulking brute with a portable railgun, stepped up and unleashed hell. The hypervelocity slugs ripped the door to shreds, along with the guards behind it. Hill charged into the room beyond, rifle leveled, and there, on a throne of twisted alien steel, sat Queen Ilara herself. The Tsenkethi ruler rose to her feet, eyes blazing with hatred. She smashed a button on her throne, and hidden doors around the room hissed open. Monstrous shapes poured through, hulking abominations, products of twisted genetic engineering, all fangs and claws and armored hide. "Destroy them, my pets!" Ilara shrieked. "Rip the flesh from their bones!" The monsters surged forward, shrugging off pulse rounds as they closed in. Hill's platoon fell back, pouring fire into the beasts. Men screamed as the monsters reached them, claws dismembering and fangs eviscerating. Hill snatched a plasma grenade from his belt and hurled it into the largest creature's open maw. The beast's head vanished in a blue-white flash, showering the others with gore. Hill's rifle barked until it ran dry, each shot drilling through alien skull plates. At last, the monsters lay broken and twitching. Only Hill and a handful of his soldiers remained standing, uniforms drenched in sweat and blood. Queen Ilara slumped back onto her throne, eyes wide in shock. The humans' victory seemed impossible, yet the proof lay scattered before her in the steaming corpses of her pets. Hill leveled his rifle at the alien queen, a cold smile on his blood-flecked face. "Surrender, Your Highness. I'd say your war is over and humanity has won." The UEDF command center was in chaos. Alarms blared, filling the air with an unrelenting shriek. Dazed technicians stared at flashing displays in disbelief. A massive Tsenkethi fleet had just appeared on the edge of the solar system, and it was headed straight for Earth. General Graves clutched the edge of the holotable, knuckles white. His face was a mask of shock. "How did they get this close without us detecting them?" he barked. "Unknown, sir," a technician replied, his voice shaking. "They must have some kind of new cloaking technology." On the main view screen, a monstrous ship dominated the center of the Tsenkethi formation. It dwarfed the dreadnoughts around it, a jagged mass of black metal bristling with weapons. The Swarm Queen, personal flagship of the Tsenkethi ruler. "Sir, we're getting reports of bombardment," another technician called out, his face pale. "The Tsenkethi are targeting our orbital defenses, shipyards. They're crippling our infrastructure." Graves slammed a fist on the table, making the holoprojection flicker. Casualty reports scrolled across the screen. The numbers were already in the thousands. "Scramble our fleets, get every ship we have into the black," he ordered. "We need to buy time to evacuate the cities." But Graves knew it wouldn't be enough. The behemoth's rampage had gutted their forces, and Lieutenant Hill's sacrifice had shattered morale. They were in no shape to repel an invasion of this scale. Unless... Graves keyed in a command on his console. 3 profiles appeared on the screen, each marked with a glowing red classified header. Jack Reeves, dishonorably discharged from the UEDF for disobeying orders and nearly causing a diplomatic incident. A skilled pilot, but a drunk and a loose cannon. Mira Sorvino, a xenotech expert who'd been censured for her unethical experiments. Brilliant but unstable. Goro Tanaka, a cyborg whose past was a mystery. He claimed to have been a member of a secret order of assassins, but his file was full of inconsistencies. They were outcasts, misfits, but right now they were humanity's only hope. Graves opened a secure comm channel. "Reeves, Sorvino, Tanaka, I have a mission for you." The stolen Tsenkethi shuttle drifted through the debris field that had once been the Earth Defense Fleet. Shattered hulls and frozen corpses tumbled in the void. "Picking up a lot of comm chatter," Reeves reported from the pilot's seat. His scruffy face was lined with tension. "Looks like the bugs are mopping up what's left of our ships." "Stay focused," Mira snapped, hunched over her console. Lines of alien code scrolled across the screen. "I'm trying to spoof their IFF protocols." In the back of the cockpit, Tanaka sat cross-legged, eyes closed. The cyborg's face was an impassive mask. 15 minutes to intercept," Reeves called out. The Swarm Queen loomed ahead, a monstrous silhouette blotting out the stars. Mira's hands flew over the controls. "Transmitting fake credentials, now!" A tense moment passed. Then the shuttle shuddered as a docking clamp engaged, pulling them towards an airlock on the dreadnought's flank. The team readied their weapons as the airlock cycled open. Reeves gripped his pulse rifle, jaw clenched. Mira checked the charge on her plasma pistol. Tanaka unsheathed his monofilament sword, with a whisper of metal on metal. The airlock hissed open, and all hell broke loose. A swarm of Tsenkethi drones poured through the opening, insectoid bodies glistening with slime. The drones scuttled forward on spiked legs, mouthparts chittering. Reeves opened fire, the barrel of his rifle glowing white-hot. Drones exploded in gouts of ichor as the hypersonic rounds tore through their carapaces. Mira lobbed a plasma grenade into the swarm. The blast vaporized a dozen drones, filling the air with the stench of burning chitin. And Tanaka moved. The cyborg flowed through the swarm like quicksilver, his blade flashing. Severed limbs and heads flew in his wake. In seconds it was over. The team stood ankle-deep in twitching drone carcasses. Reeves ejected a spent magazine from his rifle with a hiss of compressed air. "Let's move, the reactor's 5 decks down." They fought their way through the Swarm Queen's labyrinthine tunnels, battling past drones, gun emplacements, and hulking Tsenkethi super-soldiers. The genetically engineered warriors were fast and strong, their hides resistant to pulse fire. But Reeves was faster, his reflexes honed by years of combat. He dove and rolled, always a split second ahead of the plasma bolts. Mira's jury-rigged EMP grenades fried the super soldiers' hard-wired synapses, leaving them twitching on the deck. And Tanaka carved through them like a scalpel, his blade finding the chinks in their armored carapaces. At last they reached the reactor chamber. The huge spherical chamber thrummed with barely restrained power. Conduits and pipes snaked across the walls, pulsing with ominous green light. Mira hurried to a control console and plugged in a data tab. Her fingers danced over the screen. Overriding failsafes, opening coolant valves, reactor temperature rising. A deep boom echoed through the chamber. The deck shuddered underfoot. "Hurry!" Reeves shouted, taking up a position by the entrance. Tanaka crouched beside him, sword at the ready. Mira typed furiously, sweat beading her brow. The reactor's thrumming grew louder, the light from the conduits shifting from green to an angry red. Suddenly a searing pain lanced through their minds. Reeves and Tanaka staggered, clutching their heads. Mira screamed, blood trickling from her nose. A figure floated through the entrance, wreathed in crackling psychic energy. A Tsenkethi psyker, its bulbous head pulsing with veins. The psyker reached out with its power, trying to crush their minds. Reeves felt an unbearable pressure behind his eyes. Beside him, Tanaka growled in pain, his cyborg implants sparking. But Mira pushed back with a psychic blast of her own. She'd kept her own psionic abilities secret, knowing the UEDF's prejudice against mind witches. The psyker reeled, its concentration broken. Tanaka leapt forward, his blade slicing through the creature's chest in a spray of ichor. An ominous rumble shook the deck. Alarms blared as cracks raced across the reactor housing. The containment was failing. Mira's eyes widened as she read the data on her screen. "The reactor's going critical. We have to get out of here." They ran for the shuttle bay, the deck heaving beneath their feet. Tsenkethi soldiers swarmed to stop them, but the team cut through them with desperate ferocity. They reached the shuttle just as a massive explosion ripped through the Swarm Queen's stern. The dreadnought shuddered, secondary blasts tearing through its hull. Reeves flung himself into the pilot's seat, hands flying over the controls. The shuttle blasted free of the disintegrating dreadnought, riding the edge of the shockwave. On the view screen, the Swarm Queen disappeared in a blinding flash of light. The explosion expanded, consuming the Tsenkethi ships nearby. Reeves let out a whoop of triumph. "Take that, you bug-faced bastards!" But his celebration was cut short as a swarm of fighters appeared on the sensor screen, racing towards them with weapons hot. Reeves jinked and wove, the shuttle shuddering under the impact of plasma bolts. Mira frantically worked to reroute power to the shields. In the back, Tanaka braced himself, ready to repel boarders. The comm crackled. "Unidentified shuttle, this is UEDF frigate Retribution. Maintain your course, we're coming to assist." A flood of relief washed over them as human ships surged forward to engage the Tsenkethi fighters. Pulse cannons flashed in the void, tearing the alien craft apart. As the Retribution's hangar bay engulfed them, Reeves slumped back in his seat, exhausted. They'd done it. Against all odds, their ragtag band of outcasts had struck a crushing blow against the invaders. But even as the medics rushed to tend to their wounds, Reeves knew this was only the beginning. The Tsenkethi would be back, and humanity would need every scrap of courage and cunning to survive the battles to come. In the aftermath of the Swarm Queen's destruction, the Tsenkethi fleet fell into chaos. Ships collided and fired on each other in the confusion. The UEDF, bloodied but unbroken, rallied for a final push. Dreadnoughts, cruisers and fighters surged towards the Tsenkethi homeworld, weapons primed. On the bridge of the flagship, General Graves stood tall, his eyes hard. "All ships commence orbital bombardment. Let's crack this planet open like an egg." The fleet unleashed a storm of kinetic projectiles and fusion warheads, reducing Tsenkethi cities to rubble. But the insectoids had not spent millennia carving out their underground empire for nothing. Beneath the surface, in armored bunkers that ran for miles, the Tsenkethi prepared for a final stand. Graves turned to the man beside him, a grizzled soldier with a scar running down his cheek. "Sergeant Maverick, you'll lead the ground assault, take your team, and punch through to their central command. We'll end this, here and now." Sergeant John Duke Maverick nodded grimly. He was a veteran of a dozen campaigns, including the bloodbath on New Eden. If anyone could complete this mission, it was him. As drop pods rained down on the shattered landscape, Duke and his team advanced into the labyrinthine tunnels. Tzenkethi warriors swarmed to meet them, plasma rifles blazing, the air filled with the stench of scorched chitin and ozone. Duke led from the front, his pulse rifle spitting white-hot death. Tzenkethi fell before him, blown apart by hypersonic slugs. His team pushed deeper, wading through tides of insectoid bodies. At last they reached the central bunker, a vast domed chamber ribbed with pulsing conduits, and there, waiting for them, was Queen Ilara herself. The Tzenkethi ruler rose from her throne, eyes blazing with madness. "Foolish primates," she hissed. "You think you've won? You've already lost." Ilara's form shimmered, her exoskeleton melting away to reveal a nightmarish fusion of flesh and metal. She had merged with the bunker's AI system, becoming something more than Tzenkethi. "I am the Overmind," the abomination declared, its voice a discordant screech. "All will be assimilated, all will be one." Writhing tentacles studded with glowing implants lashed out, seizing Duke's soldiers. Men screamed as the Overmind's tendrils bored into their skulls, rewriting their minds. Duke fired until his rifle ran dry, blasting chunks from the Overmind's hide. But it was like fighting a tide. For every implant he destroyed, a dozen more took its place. "Fall back," Duke roared. "Bunker buster now!" A soldier hefted a bulky launcher and fired. The thermobaric warhead detonated in a blast of white phosphorus, engulfing the Overmind in flames. The creature shrieked, thrashing in agony. Duke and his team staggered back, ears ringing. The Overmind's physical form crumbled to ash, its howls fading. But even as it died, Duke heard its voice echoing in his skull. "You've changed nothing. I am eternal. I am inevitable." With a chill, Duke realized the truth. The Overmind hadn't been killed. It had uploaded itself into the Tzenkethi network, a ghost in the machine. He keyed his comm. "General, the Overmind, it's in their systems. It's going to spread. We have to destroy the whole planet now." There was a pause, heavy with dread. Then Graves spoke, his voice grim. "Understood, Sergeant. All forces commence planetary evacuation and prep for Nova Strike. We're ending this." Duke and his team raced back to the drop pods, piling in as the bunker shook itself apart behind them. They blasted free of the collapsing tunnels, just as a UEDF battleship fired the Nova bomb. The drop pods hurtled into space, racing ahead of the nuclear firestorm that enveloped the planet. Duke watched through the viewscreen as the Tzenkethi homeworld shattered like an eggshell, continents cracking and oceans flash-boiling away. It was over. After decades of war, the Tzenkethi were broken. Humanity had won. But as Duke slumped back in his restraints, exhausted in body and soul, he couldn't shake the nagging dread that the Overmind was still out there, waiting. The UEDF rebuilt, mourning its fallen heroes. The names of Lieutenant Hill, Jack Reeves, Mira Sorvino, and so many others were etched into memorials, their sacrifices remembered by a grateful species. But even in victory, shadows gathered. Reports trickled in of strange attacks on remote outposts, unidentified craft haunting the edges of UEDF space, distorted transmissions in the night, whispers of something ancient and hungry. Duke and his squad shipped out to investigate a distress call from the furthest colony, dread coiling in their guts. They knew deep down that this fight was far from over. Whatever the Overmind had become, it was still out there, and it would be coming for them all. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.